Well, good morning, good morning. My name is Becky Metcalfe, and on behalf of Design Centre Chelsea Harbour, a very warm welcome to London Design Week. We have had such a lovely time this week. Honestly, it's been like a festival atmosphere, and we're rather sad this is our last day. But what a way to end our conversations in design. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If I could ask you to turn your phones off, that would be really brilliant. Put them on silent. So the business of craft cannot be underestimated in the world of interior design at the moment. So I'm absolutely delighted to have a panel of experts to talk about how handmade items are conceived and made, but also how to use them in interior schemes. We're delighted that we have Helen Hood here, Christian Bentz, Jennifer Manners, and Francesco Pulezzi here on our panel. Now, who better to talk to them than Emilio Pimentel-Reid? Let's give them a very warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emilio Pimentel-Reid, author of Bold British Design. Welcome to Living with Craft on this glorious day. I am thrilled to introduce our star panelists. South African-born interior designer Christian Bentz has been living and working in the UK for the last 7 years. His studio focuses on residential design, creating homes which seamlessly blend the classic and contemporary. House & Garden has named him one of the up-and-coming designers who should be on everyone's radar, so now you know. Helen Hood is director of Craftmasters Gallery, an online platform for contemporary silver, tableware, and sculpture. This exciting nonprofit organization focuses on bringing silver to new audiences and helps to protect culturally important skills for the next generation. Bespoke rug designer Jennifer Manners works in both residential and commercial spaces, designing handcrafted, handmade rugs and carpets. Her studio has made sustainability and working ethics for their weavers a mainstay of its ethos, and have injected the high-end residential market with high-quality, sustainable rugs in a way no one has done before. Francesco Pugliese started working with IPE Visionaire in March 2019, joining the international team as the sales manager for UK and Ireland. In 2021, he was appointed CEO and managing director of Visionaire Home Philosophy UK. Francesco oversees the showroom at the Design Center, as well as managing direct accounts for their projects and commercial requirements for the UK and Ireland. Welcome, guys. It's a thrill to have you.
Thank you.
To get started, Christian,
Hey.
and hi. How did you get into our field of design, and how would you describe your studio's approach to style?
So I've had quite a linear path into interior design. Studied, worked hard, started in the studio. I am from South Africa, so a lot of the projects when I started out there, first 3 years of my career, was doing sort of predominantly new build commercial, new build contemporary residential projects. I then moved to the UK about 7 years ago, worked for a company called Turner Pocock, 5, and then recently started my studio. The approach to design, not to sort of make it sound entirely void of creativity, but we have quite an analytical, intellectual, conceptual approach to design, sort of asking questions about sort of how and why, and sort of understanding the balance of a room, the composition of a room, what works best, and then starting to weave in sort of client choices and style preferences. And even that, we then sort of ask why first. You know, for example, we've got a client now, I've been dealing with the project for about 4 months, and yesterday she told me her favorite color was green, and the first question I asked was why. It's like, what about the green? You know, so we sort of unpack that. You know, ultimately we want to create homes which are timeless, and I think you need to be slightly analytical and sort of intellectual about design rather than just being like, do we want? You know? So yeah, that's our approach.
And Jennifer, how about you? Tell us a little bit more about your approach to
Well,
design.
I had a kind of midlife career change and retrained as an interior designer and started doing projects for West London where I was living and couldn't find rugs for my own projects and thought, well, I know, I'll just do my own. And so started doing rugs for my projects, and then other designers who I was friends with going, oh, actually, you know, could you do a rug for my project? And then that took off. far better than my interior design. And so I kind of sort of reluctantly and didn't set out to start up a business, but that's now what I've been doing for the last 8 years. And I think why it's worked is that I think we bring something, well, I think because I come from interior design, I think the rugs have to actually work in balance, and that's something what we really harp on about. It's one thing to design something beautiful and interesting and graphically quite interesting, but it has to work in harmony with every other element in the space. And we really, I think, work quite collaboratively with the interior designers that we work with. And I think I would hope that we, enhance the kind of harmony that they're creating, and certainly supporting that design vision that the designer has. And we're constantly and looking for new ways to bring texture and innovation, and I think that's kind of how we've really defined what we do.
Helen, you've made a career change as well. Tell us about Craftmasters.
So in a previous life, which now feels like it's quite a long time ago, I was an interior designer and project manager for Nina Campbell, and I left London, freelanced for a bit, and then decided to have a midlife career change, and retrained to work in museum environments. And so that put me in contact more with decorative arts. And I was working at the Holborn Museum on an exhibition called Silver, Light and Shade, and that was
the museum in Bath.
Yeah, and that was the big light bulb moment. That's where I knew I wanted to go with my career. And because I was working with the makers that were involved in the exhibition, the contemporary makers, I started to understand what the problems were in the industry. So for a number of years, I've been doing research, supporting grant bids and things like that to try and help. And then 2 years ago, I set up Craftmasters to try and address what I saw as the biggest problems. So we sell silver online, but the real core of the business is that all the profits go into our technical training program. So we take emerging makers and give them hands-on training with master makers so that those skills can be perpetuated.
And, maintaining those craft skills is something really important, because they, and we'll talk about this later on, some of these skills are in danger of disappearing. And finally, Francesco, tell us about your background and how you got into our industry.
Funny enough, I had a career change myself.
So if all of you want to have a career change, this is the moment.
Well done.
It's kind of obvious, so I'm not going to say it.
And what were you doing before?
Yeah, I'm a former policeman, Italian policeman, actually.
A carabinieri.
Carabinieri, yeah. I spent 18 years in the force with 2 missions abroad. And then in 2012, I moved to the UK with my wife. And I've started working in Harrods as a temp, literally from scratch. I was dusting
At Harrods, yes.
And then I've been offered a job as a brand ambassador for 3 well-known brands. And then I spent the following 4 years as a field agent for the same agency. And then in 2019, as you said, I've been offered this position as a sales manager for Visionaire. And then when we opened the showroom in Chelsea Harbour here on the first floor, obviously they needed a director of the company, and they offered me that position, and I was glad to accept.
And during our conversation, we want to find out more about what makes Visionaire unique as a brand. But moving on to craft, and everyone will have a different idea of what craft is. I'll start with Helen. How do you define craft?
Oh, it's such a loaded word.
Good. There are no right answers.
No, there are no right answers.
Or wrong.
So I think there's always this tension between what is crafty and what is craft, and whether that is, at what level that is of skill. And that's been confused a bit recently by the Crafts Council redefining the definition for craft itself. And I think the problems that we've got with that is stems really back to Renaissance period, where there's a hierarchy of arts, with craft seen as lesser and painting seen as the top of the tree. So they had this thought process that the painting, although it was the top art, it wasn't about how the paint was laid on the canvas or on the panel. It was about the intellectual processes behind what was being painted. So the assumption was that the painter would have a classical education so that they can properly describe myths, legends, religious subjects accurately. And so that was why it was seen as
So it wasn't the specific
highest.
skill, it was the ideas
The education
behind it.
Yeah.
And
And that still pervades. now.
to open up the question, how would you describe craft in your fields? How would you define craft? Maybe Jennifer.
Well, it's making me think maybe I didn't research that question well enough. I think I've always thought of craft as being something that's reflective of a culture, and it definitely comes with a great deal of skill. And I think historically it's often been something that women have thought to be craftspeople. And I think that has come from a lot of time, traditionally, historically, because what they were producing were items of function, that with beauty, but items of function. And I think we're seeing, only kind of currently, this whole move toward a more elevated approach to how craft is seen, with the skill involved. And I think possibly in juxtaposition to how technology and the world is becoming so fast and modern, and so it's this kind of resurgence of the beauty of handmade things that typifies craft to me.
And for you, Francesco, what is craft in the visionaire world? What does it do? How do you
It
define
relates
it?
a lot to what they said already. We tend to nourish that expertise that artisan in Italy, exclusively in Italy, because we just produce in Italy, they can still do. And we don't want to lose that power. Obviously, we do it in a bigger scale. We can work with people like Ellen or Jennifer in different, with craftsmen in that specific environment. But then we translate this in a big, big company with showrooms all over the world, still having that approach. And because I believe we don't need to lose that, because it's part of our culture. It's
So
part of
the
us.
respect for craft is an approach at Visionaire. And is it an emotion? Why you work with many different craftsmen. Is
Yes.
there an emotion? Is there a joy in
Totally, I believe. I mean, and if you don't find that, it's a losing game. So you need to work alongside them with our designers and their expertise to create new items, which are, in certain cases, partially produced using new technology, but with this, same approach. So we don't want to lose that touch.
And Christian, you use craft in your work, in your projects. What is craft to you? Is it
Oh, so we had lots of chats about this. And sort of to think quite conceptually about it, for me, craft is about design with intent, because you've touched on that briefly. And I hope I'm not the only one in the room when I say this, but if you use the words of artisanal, sustainable, and craft in a sentence, like for me, it paints like a picture of Greta Thunberg whittling spoons at a farmer's market. It's like, and from a stylistic point of view, you go, well, how does that work for me?
how
contemporary
scary? We
design.
don't want to have that image.
But I think that's what it sort of creates. So by sort of broadening the sort of definition to design with intent, it's design with purpose. It's something made to fit a purpose with intention, with sort of thought behind it, that intellect behind it. So it's not just crafty, as you said, because otherwise, there's up and coming designers and there's people sort of contemporary designers. You go, well, my design's not crafty, so it doesn't apply to me. And if we change that definition slightly, I think we all just go, oh, actually, we can all do a bit more to incorporate craft in that sort of like hand whittling sort of definition into our designs.
And moving on to Francesco, what is the importance of, you touched on the fact that you work with a range of craftspeople at Visionaire, and there's a passion and there's a joy. What is the importance of craftsmanship in your work? And then how does that craftsmanship inform the collections that you create as a brand?
It's very important. It's deeply important. We tend to go, as I said, we tend to have the two things coming along. So we need to provide for standard pieces. We have a big collection of items, but most of them they're coming from our culture, our heritage, our history, and then it's transformed in something that it's real. But it passed through all those steps of that I mentioned. So an idea, a first design, a prototype done by someone like, that has that capability of doing things. So the artisans, and then it can become, thanks to technology, possibly something that we can produce as a standard piece. But we don't have. It's not an industrial kind of approach. We don't have, 200 chassis ready to be stained. We do it by the order. So when it comes to specific pieces, we have a couple of them in the showroom. The Lego family, for example, it's a great example of that, because we do mixed metal, which is bent by a machine, is aluminum, covered with a metal finish, and the other part is concrete. But the finish on top is made by hand. So every single one, it's an artwork, because you cannot replicate the same. It's not like producing, a computer. So there's a machine doing it. They're all different.
What's interesting at Visionaire is that you're a big brand. You have collections. And so the craft is informed by the history of Italy and the tradition of Italy. But then you have to figure out how to make more than one. And maybe let's go to Helen, who's making one. Yes. How does craftsmanship influence your work? And these are beakers from makers that Helen's gallery represents and supports.
Sorry, say the question again.
How does craftsmanship come into your work, which is what your work is all about?
It's at the core of everything. So the makers, we have 31 makers that we represent. There are probably only 120 silversmiths in the UK.
That's 120 silversmiths left in the UK.
Yeah, and this is why I set Craftmasters up, was because, and they're basically like pandas, quite a lot of them. They don't breed very well, and they sort of
maybe not with each other.
And they will refer to themselves as in that way too. So I'm not being naughty, but we're in a situation at the moment where some of these skills have got 5 years left. So what we're really passionate about doing is getting out that knowledge about the skills behind the piece. Because often when you have something that's highly finished, you don't really think about the hand processes that are involved to get to that end product. And silversmithing is quite complex, because there's this sort of accepted figure that it takes 10,000 hours to become a craftsman. Which, for a simple craft, that's true. If you spend 10,000 hours, you can become really competent at it. But with silversmithing, they need a toolbox of different skills. And so to become a craftsman, you might need to learn 30 skills.
To become a silversmith, you need to learn 30 skills.
Maybe 30, 25 to 30 skills in your toolbox. So that's 25 to 30 times 10,000 hours. So the journey to become a fully formed maker is a really long one, and that's part of the problem, really.
So there's a lot of designers, but there's very few makers, and that is where the shortage is?
Well,
or is it the approach?
industry kind of divides into two. So there's the trade side of the industry. People generally come through apprenticeship schemes, and then will stay in one company and make the same object over and over for many years. And then there are the artisan makers, which is who I work with, who come through higher education through a degree. So they're very design rich, but often skills poor when they graduate. So what we've been doing is trying to raise that skill level up, and buddy them with master makers who are at the tail end of their careers so that the skills are handed down and protected for the future. So craftsmanship is at the heart of everything that we do because it's all about the skills. And we're really passionate about sharing that with people so that people understand what's involved in making a piece.
Jennifer, tell us about the materials that you work with and how you balance that innovation with tradition.
Well, I remember in one of my first trips out to India, and you know, the great thing about getting into rugs is that I had no idea how little I knew about rugs and fibers and weaving.
Maybe that's
and
why you started a business.
I think that
you
is
didn't
why,
know
because
what
I was
was
completely
ahead.
ignorant. Is the only reason. But I think it's been a brilliant. I think from a design point of view, understanding the craft, which has happened slowly. It kind of helped, you know, it's kind of like that adage of you have to know all the rules before you know how to break the rules type of thing. And in one of my first trips, they said, well, what's interesting about weaving, which I don't think the average person thinks about, is that anything that can be plied together can be woven. And from that point, it was like, wow, so really anything? Yes, anything. And so, of course, wool and silks and bamboo, that's what you see a lot of. But what is kind of exciting is looking at different fibers and how they perform in the function of a rug, but how they sit alongside each other. And so we do look at a whole variety of grasses and banana silks and jutes and sisals, but then of course we have gone with our very sustainable kind of, you know, pursuit of working with a fiber that it's a recycled water bottle fiber, which has been around for quite some time. I think Patagonia have been making fleeces for 20 years, but we kind of found the fiber when we went into India, and we like fantastic concept. You know, tens of thousands of bottles are used in a rug, but we had to make it a luxury item. We work at the luxury end of the market.
So you turn plastic bottles into luxury.
Yes, exactly. That's
they
the
are
catchphrase, baby.
And they're actually beautiful. That is the catchphrase, and that's how you will sell millions. But they are beautiful. And so what's interesting is that you can incorporate, you know, a material like the plastic bottles, and through the skills of your makers, weave something beautiful.
Yes, they did think it was completely mad, I think, at first, when I said we're doing a hand-knotted rug with the recycled water bottles, and they said, no, we're not. I said, no, I think we are. You know, I think as, you know, to Christian's point, I think, let me check with the, oh, no, she said yes. No. But, you know, to Christian's point, I think the idea of sustainability and, you know, craft and all that stuff doesn't always, you know, it's not the words associated with luxury, I think, very often. And so I think
they can be.
They can be. And I think that's kind of our role, you know, as certainly as makers and craftspeople, you know, to kind of help support, you know, we all know the importance of sustainability, but when it comes from the luxury level, I think it becomes aspirational. Or certainly we're endeavoring to make it that way.
And Christian's actually in a good place to tell us about how you use craftsmanship in your interiors and how you support craftspeople as well.
So basically my if I want to call it my style is to try and incorporate multiple different materials and finishes into a home. And I think what that does, that contrast between one to the next, allows each material to shine. So in a way, you can have something like a silver next to something which is wooden or stone or rug, for example. So that does allow you to incorporate sort of the crafty elements into your designs quite easily because that you want that human hand. But I think also there's this, to create pieces that feel curated and collected and effortless. You know, but ultimately you want to create things which are timeless. I've said that earlier. And to do that, to think cleverly about what that item is adding to a space. So, you know, Jennifer's comment about sustainability and luxury into one thing. You know, choosing a rug that, yes, is made from water bottles, but also is luxurious and it ticks a whole bunch of boxes. If we start thinking about all those things that each product adds to a space, we'll find that we can start weaving in sustainability without having to, you know, have shutter-ply planks and TV units made from cardboard boxes or something. There's other ways to incorporate that stuff. So when you think about every element that's coming in, And so we spent loads of time when we look at the project. Okay, what is it actually adding? Yes, it's a side table. What else? Does the material sort of add a bit of warmth? Is it a gloss finish? Is it so it's not just buying something for the sake of buying it. And I think ultimately, like, I cringe sometimes when you unpack a box and it's like so much crap. And you go, oh my god, interior design is like ruining the world. But I think the ultimate sort of form of sustainability is to create something that is going to last forever, because that's the ultimate sustainability. And if you can start weaving in things. If we can start if we can start bringing in actual luxurious sort of materials, all of a sudden we start layering the sustainability thing. So we can still have fab houses and tick the box and be green.
So the crafted pieces each have a role to play in the interior. So they're all elements of the interior, and then you're creating beautifully made things that last.
Yeah.
And then as an interior designer, there is a big role, because you are the one who's actually convincing the client to support these craftsmen and be a patron.
If we're scared of incorporating them because our style is slightly rigid, or we couldn't do that because going back to the first comment about it's not crafty. I think it's broadening all the horizons slightly and all the definitions of things, so that when you go to a client, you can tell them, yes, you can have silver and gold and brass in the same thing, because that's an accessory. One's a tap and one's a something. Come on, like, let's just add everything to a room and create something quite layered and curated and effortless. So that's what I do.
And Francesca, going back, you're weaving all
hired.
of these things all together.
I want to hire you.
We're hiring you.
Cool.
You're, and so, from the point of view of a Visionaire, what are signature materials for Visionaire? And
It's a very difficult
going
question.
back to your history, because the big thing that the company has is its history and its tradition, and you wouldn't know it from looking at the very modern pieces that you make. So, what are the materials that you would say the brand likes to engage with, and then how do you make them look fresh and desirable?
Right. So I will say that we work with any materials. You cannot identify Visionaire with just one material, because the identity of the brand, it's a brand. So we produce everything from sofas to bed linen. So the approach is always making the difference, in my opinion. So our heritage comes from upholstery. So we started in the 60s producing sofas, basically. And we've been doing that for a good 40 years before becoming Visionaire, which is a total look brand. So we acquired and kept that expertise and started to explore, all the other options, just because we wanted to give that opportunity to our client to fulfill their dreams. So it's not just a daily matter; it's also a future matter. So we started to do that process, and we ended up in changing ourselves continuously. And so we are now very contemporary, and every year we produce a new collection which is related just with our history, but never with the previous collection of the next coming. So there's a lot to be said.
I like the idea that Crafts is there to fulfill your clients' dreams. That's
It is.
Yeah,
It is.
Craft fulfills
Yes.
dreams. And now I want to open up the questions to all of you. What is the role of craftsmanship in the future of modern design? Who wants to go first?
I got this.
I got this. You go.
Thank you.
So again, sort of like thinking conceptually, like as a classic designer, that produces classic interiors. Even as Jennifer, your rugs need to sort of fit in with sort of modern day stuff. Sometimes innovation, again, it's like, oh, is it robots and lasers? It's all new, and I think sometimes for me the future of craft is conceptual, modern day, innovative thinking, perhaps applied with the old way of doing things. So looking at your silverwork there, you go, okay, cool. Like we can create something which is new and innovative, which is contemporary in its application for 2022, but in a way which is whittled with little hammers, and this, that's where I think, London's quite full of it, actually. Like Pimlico Road, you walk around there and there's suppliers like Pinch and Howe and Jam and all that. They're sort of creating, in a way, the sort of antiques of tomorrow.
And the design center as well on every
exactly.
floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like branding. They're creating contemporary design, but it's also the design for the future. Every designer likes to use the term, mix old and new. Let's fast forward sort of 40 years. What are the old things we'll be using then? And I think they are the things now which we're applying a new sort of innovative thinking, but using craft and QU, bottles and
Thanks.
mugs. There you go. Prime example.
Yes, exactly, for
Yeah,
example. Yes, precisely. But also, I think in a more abstract way, I think what craft, I think it's what comes with it are the stories behind how it's made and the passion behind it and talking, where the design came from. It comes from emotion. It comes from something beyond just the function of the object. And I think as we get to, yes, 100% agree with everything that came from Christian's mouth just then, but also and the innovation and using design to really bring old way of doing craft and weaving, for example, and using innovation. But I think it's the importance of craft will continue to grow because we love the stories, and in a fast-paced world and things are so quick, the idea of why something made with passion and what it comes from, and then it just gives a whole meaning to certainly an object, but then a place as you start balancing them with several other things.
But let's be honest, not everything that's like handmade is good. So some of it is a little crap. Helen, should we melt granny silver to like make amazing new pieces?
Well, yes. Okay, I'd caveat.
Yes,
with,
explain.
We have never destroyed anything that had historical importance. I will put that out there. But absolutely, silver's the ultimate modern material, really, especially at the moment. It's antibacterial.
Oh.
And that's where born with a silver spoon in your mouth comes from. It's actually, it is to do with wealth, of being able to possess that. But it's also that it gives you health. So yeah, it's antibacterial, which is great, but it's already, when you buy new bullion, is 80% recycled already, even if you just buy standard silver bullion. But what we can do, and we've done quite often with clients, is to take things that have been sort of squirreled at the back of a dusty cupboard and not loved, that belong to a great aunt or whoever, and you don't love her taste, but it has sentimental value. And we can commission a maker to create a new piece that's modern, that's relevant to that person, and it still has the DNA of Granny or Auntie.
Exactly, it still has her silver,
but it goes back to the same
but
point
not her taste.
every time.
But not her taste, and it's usable and relevant and loved, can be loved again. Yeah.
And has a story.
And has a story. Yes.
We won't have another Renzo piano without the Coliseum. So we go back always to the same point. So we will have more of this product with investing in our past instead of just the future. The point is, how do we put together these things? So in this specific case, we are about to lose that ring of the chain that connects the two things. So we have maybe the expertise, but we cannot pass it on because no one is investing in it. So that's something that we have to take into account.
We're definitely at a moment in time. There's an opportunity, as it stands at the moment. Exactly, I agree with you. And this isn't just for silversmithing, this is for many crafts. Because we've had, as polytechnics turned into universities in 1992, so this is, since 92, this problem has existed, where in this country crafts is not taught in a skills-based way. We are at a point in time, fortunately, where we can salvage that going forward and protect those skills. So with silversmithing, it's 1,000 years of history. The Assay Office next year celebrates 800 years of hallmarking.
Oh, wow.
So we have this incredible cultural history, but we need to take the opportunity now to realise that these materials, whether it's silver or glass or ceramics, rugs, furniture making, and use them and buy thoughtfully, because you can be part of that story of protecting those things for generations to come.
And that's where interior designers come in. That's where
Well,
patrons,
no
no pressure, patrons come in.
Yeah.
New people who may be interested in learning the skills, and also larger companies that can incorporate these skills into their future collections. Talking about the future collections, what are you all looking at in your current work that you're able to share with us today? Any future projects?
So just sort of sum up, this project I'm working on at the moment is a Georgian restoration project, and the brief is quite historic. It's a pared back period that we sort of being quite sort of tight to a time. I think it's 1840 to 1845, like a little window. And obviously we're restoring it to that sort of former glory, but also the contemporary pieces that we are creating, because it's a family home, people are going to live there, and kids running up and down the staircase. It's trying to find the things which were appropriate for then, but they work for now, and things that are appropriate for now, but the way in which they were created then. So we're sort of pulling from the future and the past and everything to try and create a home which sort of brings that house up to current status on every level, and so it can survive another sort of 100 years. So for example, on obviously the things like cornicing and skirting and your choice of rug and stuff, but we're doing a beautiful plate wall, and all the plates have to be made in the way that they were when the house was done. So we're going all the way to ceramic. So we really, it's quite tedious, but we're pulling things from all different angles. But it allows all these little things. So it's not just a case of creating a beautiful home, but it's thinking about every element. So again, there's a story. There's also it's appropriate. It's considered. It'll last for another 100 years.
They're
all
future
that,
heirlooms.
the future. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Antiques of tomorrow and all that jazz. Yeah.
Very inspiring. I think we're continuing to really focus on our sustainability, and we've put so much effort into making our repurposed fiber, which is like wool, which is brilliant. And so I think now we're looking at taking, and the beauty of it isn't just that it's made with the recycled water bottles, but it's the performance aspect. So it's super hard wearing, and it's bleach cleanable, and it's brilliant for kind of function and life, and
I
certainly
love
busy
that
homes.
bleach cleanable. It's
Bleach
like
cleanable.
really clean.
Yes, very, very, yeah. Yes, but it's very matte, and so it's kind of, now we go, well, fantastic, but how can we take that same fiber and sort of recreate it, which is what we're working on, to look a bit more like silk, and a synthetic kind of silk that has the same performance aspect of it, and still the
So
sustainability.
you're refining the
We
process
are.
as you go along to create
We
something more
are.
luxurious.
Well, we're trying, yeah.
Ah.
Yes.
We have an entire book of materials called Regeneration that comes from bottles. And they're very nice. I mean, leather looks like real leather, and velvet like real velvet. And so I totally agree.
Yeah.
With even bigger company are doing the same. So
Yeah.
And you're also, is Visionaire exhibiting later down the line in some interesting
We are
fairs?
participating to the Homo Faber, which is an event organized by the Michelangelo Foundation of Creativity and Craftsmanship in Venice.
In Venice.
In April. And we have been requested to dress one of those rooms with our pavoncelle, which are, we call it, the name of its pavoncelle means little peacock. So we have designed, not us, Mark Ainge designed 3 artworks, unique pieces of big throne for ourselves, and plus a standard collection of small armchairs with the same design, and that goes back again to culture and our heritage, and because obviously the production of those pieces is very complicated and needs artisans to produce that. But then there's an idea in the back which is it relates with the attitude of the peacock itself, which is a weak bird. He cannot fly, he cannot run that fast, but he can scare people with his beauty. opening the plumage. So that was the idea.
I think what a great goal to have
How
in
familiar.
life, to scare people
I mean,
with your beauty.
Beauty will save us. So that's what we have kind of trying to say last year when we produced the beauty collection.
And I think what's interesting is that the craftsmanship and the skills that the company possesses put you in the right space to be able to participate in this sort of event in Venice, which is not something that you find normally in a company that's a large brand that produces multiples of things.
Yes,
so it says a lot about Visionaire.
It's not the only event, but this one is rather important.
And what's up with you?
Well, we're quite a young company, so for us, it's just about carrying on at the moment what we're doing and getting the word out there about what contemporary silver is, because there is a perception of what silver is, and what we do is very different in what it looks like. So a lot of what we're doing is outreach. So we do a monthly online salon every month, which brings together makers and collectors and patrons so that they can talk. So those have been fantastic. And we've got London Craft Week coming up. We're going to be demonstrating live demonstrations of 3 different skills over 2 days at Connolly.
Oh.
So, yeah, but we've got one of our makers is also at Hobo Farm.
Oh, very exciting. It's very exciting. We do have a little time for questions. I think there may be a microphone going around.
Make it official.
Who would like? Does anyone have a question for the audience? Well, I do. Are there, while people think about questions, are there any tips that you would share with our audience about how best to incorporate craftsmanship into their vision and their lives? We may have, students in the audience, interior designers, collectors. So how would you incorporate? How should our audience incorporate crafts into their lives?
This one's for me. 2 things. Well, we can be here all day actually. But one, don't think too hard about it. Like, I think if you think too, using the silver or the metal finishes as an example, if you think too hard about it, you scare yourself out of making sort of choices about incorporating things. So there's that. Just chill slightly. And then also just think about, going back to the first comment I made about design with intent. I think if you're thinking about what the piece is and what it adds to the room and the story behind it, I think you sort of fall in love with them for more reasons than it just being a table that you put a lamp on or a blanket that you put at the end of the bed. You are creating sort of like reasons for using something more so than just it serving a purpose. So I think you'll just be a bit savvy about your shopping and stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think start small.
Yeah.
And things where if you pick them up, it sounds really trite, but if they spark joy when you pick something up, if it speaks to you. We're really keen on is that somebody that buys an object becomes part of that object's journey. So it's like what you were saying earlier about your future thinking. So if you start small with something that you use every day, like a beaker or a spoon, that becomes your go-to thing and gives you some joy every day. And then you can get confidence from that about what you really like and move on to larger objects and larger projects.
Because what hasn't been said, I think similar, I think to what Christian was saying, is cultivating a curiosity about objects and asking questions and learning the kind of story of the object. I think it certainly gives one a passion for the object, and then in the as what you said, Helen, with buying, starting small, with that joy, it kind of continues from that point, and then you find no one comes over because you'll bore them with all your stories about all your objects of joy. But I think,
or you'll just scare them with all the beauty.
yes, that could be too. But I think that cultivating curiosity about asking the questions, where's it from, how's it made, why is it made that way, what's the idea behind the design, what's, that, I think that gives it meaning, and it's a good way to incorporate craft.
Yeah, again, I believe persevering on the research, don't give up, and try to be curious and go deep into the culture of things that we like, and try to blend this to our personal ideas and personal being. So that, yeah.
Well, it's been fascinating speaking with all of you today. I love the idea of supporting craft, promoting craft, preserving skills, and more importantly, sparking joy. And the Design Center and all of the showrooms here are all about bringing joy. And yes, there are the antiques and heirlooms of the future here. I encourage you to follow our panelists on Instagram. And Jennifer Manners and Visionaire have showrooms in the Design Center. If you need a little craft inspiration, my new book, Bold British Design, features a lot of the designers in the Design Center, and it's available at Potterton Books. Oh,
There it is now.
Thank you so much for joining us today, and our panel will be available afterwards if you want to ask a personal question.
What a wonderful way to spend a morning. Goodness me, there's so much to learn about craft. The storytelling, it comes from emotion and passion and provenance, and all of that gives new meaning to an object. We spoke about nurturing artisans. Who knew that a craftsman needs 10,000 hours? Don't we need to look after those 120 silversmiths, those pandas? We need to make sure that we keep those safe. Craft can be luxurious, innovative, sustainable. Very interesting to hear about your recycled bottles, Jennifer. Something handmade brings so much, those different finishes, the stories, the function, the joy. Invest in a lovely timeless piece because it adds so much to highly curated interiors. We're actually very big on craft at the Design Centre. If you love craft, a note for your diary is the 10th of May when we have our artefact exhibition, contemporary craft exhibition, and we would absolutely welcome you to that. In the meantime, please give a very, very big thank you to our brilliant panel and to Emilio for leading such a lovely session this morning.
Thank you.